Right, so in this video, I'll be showing you exactly how to register a user using React and Vite. Because we don't have a database, we'll be using local storage. It is not recommended to use local storage for storing any sensitive information. This video is basically for educational purpose to show you how this works generally and to show you exactly how the global state and all of those stuff work in React. All right, so we already have a form here, and the form has first name, last name, email, and password. This is where we want to register the user from. This is the registration form, right? So what we really need to do is register a user and store the user somewhere, because we don't have a database. We're using local storage. So the user will be stored in our local storage, which is found exactly when you get to this part. Go here, application, then go to your local storage. So store the user here, somewhere around here. So create a key for storing a user using this. So we'll call this, let's just call it reg users. Yes, reg users. So it will be for this particular web page. All right. So let's close it and go back to the code. I'll also be showing you exactly how to fill your use state objects the easier way using the JavaScript concept. Okay, so this is your use states that we collect all the information that the user is typing in this form. All right, so we have the first name, last name, email, password. We have the ID, then we have the role. But we're interested in the ones we are filling is the first name, last name, email, and password. This is what we are filling. This ones will be automatically generated. So if you go to your form, you have the first name, last name, email, and password. Exactly what we have here: first name, last name, email, and password. So this is what we want to fill up as an object. So let's see how we can do that with React. So this is our input component, and the input component, I want to introduce a new prop for it. So let's go to the input component itself. The input component is somewhere around here. Okay, this is the input component. All right, so this is the input component. So what I need to do is add a new prop. This is a prop. So this is a prop. So let's locate our TypeScript file. So the TypeScript file is here. So let's find the interface for the input component. So this is the interface. And so I want to introduce a new prop called name, which is mandatory. And it's going to be a string. It's going to be mandatory, yes. Oh, not mandatory. Okay, I don't want to create error somewhere else I've used it. All right, so name has been introduced is going to be a string, and so let's go back to registration component. All right, so we want to pass name, which is a prop, as part of the function. We'll return this as function here. So go here and get the name. Then let's pass it here as the third parameter. Okay, so it's a third parameter that we can pass here. All right, or we can also change this to an object and make it easier. So we can say something like const payload, which is an object, and it's going to be a type of, it's going to return text, which is going to be a string. It's going to return custom data, which is going to be unknown, and it's going to return name, which is going to be string. Then we say this is equals to text. It's going to be the text that is coming from here, this text here. All right, or if you want to make it, you can just declare an interface for it here. So you can come here and say export interface is going to be input function prop attributes. So we are passing function payload. Let's call it function payload attribute. So here we are passing text as string, passing custom data as unknown. We are passing name as string. All right, so we can easily reference it anywhere we want. So we can go back to this point here and say our custom data has this. All right, the payload has this. So we have text, we have custom data, which is going to be custom data, and we have name, which is going to be name. So uh, let me see. So it's a string. So see what's going on here. Text is coming from this text prop here that we structured here. Is it custom data? Exactly the custom data coming from the prop, wherever the input component is used. Name, same thing, the prop that's coming from here. So in this case, we can just pass payload as the argument for this prop function. All right. So we know that anytime we invoke this function, we'll be accessing these properties. Becomes easier to access text, custom data, name. I prefer passing responses or data as an object. Is for me, it's way better to pass it as an object when dealing with arguments than passing it just the way I did initially. I'll explain that later why it's best that way. Okay. So let's go back to the input. Let's save this one. If you go back to the input, now we've done this now. So let's go to wherever I want to use this. Where I want to use it is, let's look at the registration. Now on the registration component here, we have input, we have custom data. Now for the name usually is, let's go back to the input. We have a name prop for the React input, the name prop. So we can just pass name to it. So this name is a prop coming from input element directly in React. Okay, and just the way it has placeholder, type, name, and all of those, it also has a prop called name. So we just pass the name to it. All right, this is quite good. So go back to so we can now pass name. So what we really want you to do is you would need to make sure the name that you're passing here is same name that you have here. It have to be the same thing. This way you have first name, last name, email, and password. It has to be the same thing. So maybe one of the things you can do is you may have to pass this as part of the data you have. Look at the reg data, reg input data you have here. Where is the data.js? Go to data.js here. Data.js here. So let's search for this. Exactly. So we have first name, last name. So you can see this is just to display these values. All right. Right. That's what we just did. So we won't render the component over and over again. So we basically use that as value. Okay. So let's remove all these ones. So that's exactly what's going on. Your reg data is just there. So we need to modify that information a little bit so that we can contain the name for each of these objects fields. All right. So you can see why it is good. So I prepare my data this way now. Go back here and we have this reg attributes stuff. Okay. And if we go to our TypeScript file, we have it here just like this. So now we just need to make this as an object. So you can take this away and make it interface, and so we can call it field name, um can say export type reg input field name attributes. All right, attributes. So say is this good. So we can say the field name is a type of this. Okay, so we can now have name field. Name field will now be exactly the name that you want to create in your object. The way you want to create the names in your object, we have this, just the same thing you have here should be the name. That's the rule of the name prop in the input element in React, this name prop. All right, so it helps with updating your values. So we can have another field here and say, okay, export type reg input name attributes. So it's a type of this. So we have first name, or so it has to be the same name with your object field. Okay, or email, same names. I'm just copying it because I want it to be same name. All right, I think the last one is password. All right, so password. Okay, yep, that's it. So password, and we can just get this now, the rect name input, and just make it the type of this. That's all. So we now have an object, we have interface object, and if we go back to our data, you can see this is showing an error. So we can basically remove this, just remove this. It's an array, an object. So field name can now be first name. Then we need a name prop, name field, which is also going to be first name. So let's look at this now. So we can just duplicate all of this. Field name on this, we want, let me see what's the next field, last name. So there should be last name, and the name attributes based on our objects is last name. Exactly this that we have here, last name. All right. So what next? Email, right? Email, email, and the name field for email is email. I think the last one is password, right? So password. So here is password, and this is the password, a small letter password, password. Good. So we've changed everything now to object array, and if we go back here, this will throw error because it's now an object array, it's no longer string array. So it's going to be item dot field name, right? So I'll probably prefer to use the name tag. So name is equals to, we don't have this value in the name field. So we have a small letter p, that is password. Then we use password, as we use text. Placeholder, we are interested in using the field name for placeholder so that we can have that here. So then this name prop, now we can now pass item dot name to it, text tag, okay, item dot field name. All right, so you can see everything still remains, so nothing changed, everything still remains. Okay, now we have this handle on change function that we call here, and remember the handle on change function in our input is simply going to return this function, get on change function, and it's going to pass payload, which has access to text, custom data, and name to it. All right, so that's what we're going to do here. So come here, we want to update this object value. Instead of saying if, okay, you can come here and say it's returning payload, right? Payload, payload is a type of, it's going to ask you what type is that. Let's see the type of this. This is what we are expecting from the function. Please remember this. This is exactly what we're getting from here. We are getting this get on change. We invoked get on change, and we pass get on change here on change function, which is this. We just invoked it. All right, and we can say if no get on change, we can return this to prevent error. So no, if no get on change. All right, so this get on change is basically this on change function we passed here, and that is exactly what we did here on change. Look at it here. So we call this function handle on change, which is what we declared here, and anytime the user types something in the input box, we invoke our function, and as we invoke our function, we are passing payload as the argument to it, and the payload that is an argument is exactly what we have here as text, custom data, and name. All right, so that's what we have access to here. So the payload is a type of this. It's a type of this, and here we have this now. So if you check, if we say console.log payload, let's see what's going to be there. payload. So if we type anything, the inbox, so I am typing A here, and if you check our payload, you can see our payload is returning field name, name, first name, all right? And the text is A. So you can see return custom data, and you can see this way, custom data, I passed, you got custom data, I passed item to it, all right? So I may not need custom data, so I can just remove this one, right? Or I can just pass maybe anything I like, probably dot first name. So if you look at it now, if we just type here bb, so you can see what you're seeing here is exactly this payload, right? So you can see this text payload, you can see the text payload. So it's an object that has custom data. The custom data is this one, which is what we passed here. So because we are typing in first name, that's what you're seeing. The name field is first name, which is first name has a name field called first name, which is basically the way it is. Then the text itself is the bit, is the text that we are typing, all right? So now that you have access to this in this function, so you can just update your use states, all right? So it's very easy now to update your use state. So you can say set reg data. Set reg data is going to be just return everything that you had in reg data. Then what you can do, or the best way you can do this is simply say let's get reg data equals to reg data, all right? It's equals to reg data, right? Or you can even do it this way, reg data, right? So now if you want to update the reg data, now you can say get reg data. Remember in JavaScript, you can do object notation. So if you say reg data dot email equals to hello, that would work, right? That means you're changing the value of email to hello. If you say get reg data dot first name, if you say is equals to base, it will work. This is pure JavaScript, right? Remember? So, but you can't be doing this manually. So that was why you pass the name prop. All right. So the name prop, like I said, has to match the same name of your object field. So this makes it very easy. So what you just have to now do is you say get reg data, you put the object notation, then you pass the payload. We need to destructure the payload here. So const object equals to payload. So we can have access to them text, name, custom data. So this is going to be name. Say is equals to text. So what's going on here is then once you've done that, you can simply just pass in get reg data here. So what's going on here is that remember that name contains each of these object fields. So you simply just saying reg data dot the object field is equals to text. Okay, id, all the fields that we have on the objects row. All right, so the TypeScript file was having a bug which I had to pause the video to fix. All right, so you just have to say create a variable called keys or whatever name you want to call it. We just want to fix it works, but the TypeScript error is what I'm trying to fix. So just go create a variable called keys and say it's equals to this name that you have here. Remember the name itself is actually what you created here. You created here. And the name actually follow the pattern of this it here. So and it actually follow the pattern of this object you have here, and this object actually has its own TypeScript file. All right, so you're going to say it is equals to the name, and that the name is as key of, so it's now a key of this particular object. So the key of this particular object. All right, this is an object itself, and if you check out this object in your TypeScript file, there is the object, user object. You can see first name, last name, they are all the same thing with this object here. So it's a key, and object key. So an object key of this particular object. However, I can see there's still error here. So you can just pass the keys here as this or ID, whatever name you like, you can call it. But there's still an error here. And if you hover on this to check out the error, it's saying that type string is not assignable to type admin and customer. The reason is keys are strings. Object keys are strings. They are known as strings in JavaScript. And if you look at my TypeScript file for user attribute, there is a field called row, which is not a string, rather is a type of this. And this type is admin and customer, right? So to eliminate this error, you can simply just come here and say, it is this or string, all right? So just add string to the row. That will eliminate it. So if you look at it now, the error is gone. So now you're just simply saying objects, the whatever name you have here, and the name you have here could just be first name, could be last name. So you're just saying objects get reg data dot name. If it is name that you typed, then it's equal to the text that you passed in here. So to really understand what's going on, just use console log payload to see what's going on, that you understand exactly what you're doing. So you just pass the get reg data to the set reg data to set your use states. Remember, these are you do your use states. So when you set it, then it is done. Let's console log and say console.log reg data. Right. So let's see what's going on here. So if we come here, let's delete everything we have here. So we can say Kingsley. So let's check the objects. You can see Kingsley is being typed in the first name. Perfect. So let's look at last name. Say last name is Davis. If you go back to, remember this we have here is simply this console log here. So check it here. You can see last name is David. All right. And password, we already have password. Email, you can just say kingsemail.com. You check it out. You have your email, kingsemail.com. All right. So you can see it's working. This is cleaner than the first one we did when it comes to registering user. All right. So this handles the input. This input we have here, and we can change the password to something like 1234, right? Just 1234. Okay, so this is where we now register the user. This function register the user. So we have all the data populated in our use states. So we need to now register this user in our local storage, right? So if we come here, this is a function that does that. And if we look at it very well, we have a global state and we have reg users, right? Reg users. And now let's look at our reducer function. Our user function, let's see what our user function is doing. For our user function, we have a dispatch function for reg user. So we have something like reg user. It is it. And reg user currently, for now, store the user in our local storage. So we can actually have this store our user in our local store in our global state. Pardon me, stores our user in our global state. So it gets a temporary user, which you get from state of reg user. Temporary user dot push. So you push whatever you bring from action dot payload, which is all the information from this field. All right, push into it. Then we pass whatever we push into the temp user. Then we just assign temp user to reg user. Right. This is how we register a user in our local storage. All right, in our use context, that is the global states. But like I said, whenever we just refresh the page, we lose this data, we lose it, all right, because it's in memory, so we lose it. So we need to store this in our local storage and fetch the updated data from our local storage on this. So it's very simple. Local storage actually stores string. So it does not store an array. So you cannot keep an array there. And look at, this is an array, reg user is an array. So you can't keep an array there. So you have to stringify the array to be able to store it on local storage. So how do you do it? So you can go, so let's create this on local storage. So you can say const get local storage item. All right. So it's equals to, there are methods in local storage. One of the methods is local storage dot get item. You can read more about it. This get item from the local storage. So let's call our item, let's call our key in our local storage reg users. All right. So we want to get item called reg users. If you check our local storage now, we don't have anything called reg users. Check it out. Now local storage, we don't have, because we don't have anything called reg users, right? We don't have anything called reg users. Good. So nothing like reg users. So we just have to be pragmatic here. So we can say if no get local storage item, that means we didn't say anything. That means we don't have a key called reg users. We need to create one. So if we don't have a key called reg users, we need to create one. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create the object for our registration, and that's it here. So we can say get reg users. All right. So equals to the reg users we have here, our reg data, this reg data here. So we have the reg data. So we say it's reg data. Okay. So it's this reg data here. So we want to update our fields. So we can say get reg data, get reg users dot id. Remember, we didn't populate the ID here. All right. So it's going to be equals to, we want to give it an ID. And to do that, we can say we need to get the total number of items we have on local storage first, then add one to it. All right. So we may have to postpone this from here now. So let's sort this out first. So if there is no item here, if there is no item at all from reg users, if no item from reg users, or reg users gets local storage item dot length is less than number one, that means it's empty array, right? It's an empty array. So if there is no item, there's no key called reg users, or there is a key but the array is empty, then that means we need to create the array or push a user into the array. So what we can do simply is we can say get this item here, all right, this item here. So we can say local storage dot set item is another method in local storage. So the item we are setting now is the key. The first argument is the key. So this is the key name of the key. So name it reg users, and we can now pass our array to it. This array, this object, but we need to signify it. So we use a method called JSON dot signify, and we make it an array and pass get reg users into it. Now this will help us store the user into local storage. However, we need to give the user a number ID. So because we know at this point there is nobody in the reg user array in local storage, so we can simply say get reg user dot id. So we can just say it is equals to 1, right? Because at this point we know there's no user at all in the array. So we just make sure it's an array, then using stringify method, we were able to stringify the array. It becomes a stringify array, and we can save it in local storage. So this way, we have saved it in the local storage. Right, so this basic logic, we know at this point there is no key called reg user, so there's no item in the array, or there's no array at all. So at this point, if this is the first user being created and this is the first array being created to store in local storage, so we just give it an ID of 1. Now, if we find something here, so we can say else, that means we found a user. All right. If this didn't go through, then this will run. That means there's an array, or there's a key called reg users has been found, and that key is an array. All right. So it's going to be an array. And so the next thing we can do is, now is we can get it. So we can say we need to pass it. Remember, it's coming from the local storage, so it's stringify. So we need to pass it. So we can say const passed reg users equals to get local item, or you can say json dot pass get local item. So we just passed it. All right, so we can say it's as user attribute array. Okay, so we now know that it's a type of user attribute array. So here we have this. Now it's now an array because when you were saving it, you use this json.stringify method to convert the array into string array. However, if you want to use it in JavaScript, you have to convert the stringify array back to regular JavaScript array. So this is what this two method does. This method stringifies and JavaScript array or whatever. It could be objects into stringify item. It could be stringify array or stringify objects, whatever it is. And this item convert it back to the original form in JavaScript, so you can work with it in JavaScript, right? Because you can't be performing the regular JavaScript method on the signify array, so you have to paste it back and use it, right? So now you've passed it, so you can come here and now push. Okay, so you can, this could be let's, so this could be let's, all right, so you can come here and say pass reg users dot push. So we now want to push get reg users, all right, get reg users. So now before we do that, we need to add the user's ID. So we can say, because we already have this now, so we can say get reg users dot ID is equals to pass reg users dot length plus 1. All right, so we, because it's a string actually, so this can work because this is a number. So what we can do, we can say um let's reg ID equals to this, then reg ID can now be converted to string. All right, so we'll just convert it to string, then we can now pass this reg users into this. After doing that, we need to now save it back to the local storage, so we can say local storage dot set item. All right, so remember we have a key already. The key is reg user. The key has to be the same name, so else it will create, if you use another name to create another set of key. So set users, then we have to do what, apply json.stringify method, because this is, at this point, is already a regular JavaScript array, so we have to use this method to verify. So you can see this is basically what's going to happen. So we have saved this item in local storage. Then let's not forget, we also need to call our dispatch method for saving the item in our use context, last context. So we can say dispatch a type. So let's look for reg user. Good. And at this point, we can just call it here. Actually, we can call it here. If it's here, so we can just call it here. We could just write it once instead of repeating the code. All right, but we can just write it here and say, okay, is this, so payload is going to be reg users, get reg users. The reason is we just know that at this point the ID is 1. All right, and at this point the ID is exactly what we have in the local storage. So just to keep consistency with the ID number of the user, so I had to just do this twice here. Though you can still do it once if you want to, but still this still works. So we're done with the registration process, and let's test it out. So if you go back here, and if you look at your reg, you don't have that here. So you have this user. So let's save this user. Let's see if that works. Perfect. So you can see reg user is now in our local storage. So you can see it now. So it's working exactly how we want it to work. Now let's go to, before we register this user, we need to make sure that the user does not exist in our local storage. User does not exist in our local storage. If it does exist in our local storage, we need to terminate the process. And where do we check that? Because at this point, it is assumed that no user is found on local storage. So definitely there is no need to run the code here. However, if we find something here, it means we already have key value called reg user. So we need to confirm if the user exists or not. If the user exists, we don't want to register that user again. So now that we have that, we need to, we already passed it here, right? This pass user, which is already a JavaScript array. So we can use the find method. So const find duplicate, so equals to pass reg user dot find. All right, it says item. So we say item dot email is equals to reg, equals to reg user, this one, this reg user here, reg data dot email. So if they are the same, then that means you found a user. So here we can say if find duplicates. That means there's already a user that has that same email that is in our system. So we need to return it. However, we can call it toasts. I think we already have the toast set up here. So dispatch type set toasts as a payload. Payload has states, right? Set to true. Text. We can convert the text that user already registered. Now, if this condition does not run, then we go ahead and register the user. Perfect. So this is it. If we go back here and try to register this user already registered. That's because this email is already found here. So definitely, that's what's going to happen. All right. So now is button true. So kings@gmail.com. So let us try kingsleydavis@gmail.com. So we can say kings davis, the same thing we registered before. kings@gmail.com with a password. So try to register it. It's already registered. Good. As you can see. And it didn't register the user again. But let's look at our use context. Our use context, we remember we have something here. Use context, we have reg users. So let's see if it is if it's also registered there. So console.log states, right? Dot reg users reg. Let's check it out. So now console, go to console and check reg. Okay. Remember I refreshed the page, right? So go back to application. Let's remove this reg users here. So let's delete it. Delete the key. So it's gone. And let's now try to register this user again. So register this user. So reg user is back. Then check console.log. Reg user is here. Now you can see the problem. When we refresh this, you can see we've lost the state reg user. But if you go to application, your local storage, you still have the data here persisted, right? So now how do you do that? So what you can do is if you go to your global context here, you have reg user here. So instead of pointing out this an empty array, you can simply say local storage dot get item reg users. So just make sure it is same name that you have on your local storage. So reg users is the name or an empty array. All right. So reg users is, but you can't work with the item coming from reg user because it's a string. So you can say JSON dot pass and uh, let me see as user attribute array. Okay, let me see this one. All right. So now we are getting the reg users directly from local storage or an empty array. So if you just refresh this, let's check out our console. Whenever we refresh our console, whenever we refresh our page, you can see this global state is now updated and in sync with our local storage. So we're no longer losing the data whenever we refresh. So I remember this is simply this reg is here. It's just the state of reg users. So we no longer lose the values in the global state for reg users anytime we refresh the page. So you can see it's persisting. That is what we call data persist. But you don't use the local storage for sensitive information or data. This is just for educational purpose to show you exactly how it works and how you can write logic in JavaScript using React. Okay, so thank you for watching.